Julie here with Sirius Talis Mundis is Venus hour, Jupiter day. Venus is with Deneb Algadi. The moon is applying to oppose Saturn, which is why I don't try to make a talisman or something. Um, First of all, I love to bring things from ideas to action, and it's something I was talking about for a while. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk about Uranus in Gemini and Saturn Uranus in Gemini, how to prevent death camps, and you're going to be surprised. It's going to be way easier. Um, and I'm talking about the business sector and how to adapt and take advantage of the opportunity, because this is a great opportunity to have businesses um, and new labor unions. There's going to be rejuvenation in the labor unions. So I'm going to talk about the list of opportunities that I see. But first of all, I have been bitching about the fact that the people that make my coffee don't have a chair. But I want to take that from an idea to action. And if you're a cafe, okay, and you're willing to adapt your business in a way that people will have a chair or people will be able to work, whether with a disability or something like that, and of course to not be informant, um, then right now I'm situated around Israel. But you can write your name on the list. And I'm going to definitely promote, and again, just promote in the sense that, hey, if people find out that someone is corrupt, someone is this, someone is that, or an employee gets harassed or energy weapon used against, then you know that you got to give a guarantee that you won't silence those testimonies. But then if I'm around, I don't mind to be the person that sits at the cafe. Okay, I don't mind to be the person that sits at the cafe. If you're worried about not having clients or clients not being used to seeing the employees sit or the employees relax, then very likely I'm going to be your first client. And hopefully that first bird, that cornerstone, is going to bring more people to the business. I know that there are people that are thinking to change from, um, let's say, baristas to coffee machines. Usually there is still a kitchen. Like I'm talking about, um, and normally when people want whether they want to do people watching um, or sit at a cafe, usually they prefer that there are people there. Um, so that's one thing. It's a lot of burden on the business, but if your concern is that people won't sit in the cafe or won't be at the cafe, um, then that's one thing that I'm willing to actually do. Um, and I can broadcast from the cafe or sit in a place where it's comfortable to record a podcast um, without disturbing the guests. But it is visible that I sit there. Um, that's already one thing your business can do to break free and to adapt. Of course, everything from the graining of the coffee to the minerals. Okay, it's gonna take some time. It's not something that's gonna happen tomorrow, but if you're willing to make the adjustment, you're going to be one of the first businesses that are going to be standing to the standards that will prevail Uranus in Gemini. We're talking about protecting your business from energy weapons for the employees and for the clients. Talking about protecting your business from being an informant. Now, I'm not doing the job. Okay, I'm not doing that for you, but definitely, if you tend to those things right now, not only that you're not going to be considered doing crimes against humanity or the business that did crimes against humanity, but also you're setting the cornerstone for something that's gonna stand the test of time. Okay, because when the labor union strikes, they strike. They pour milk, they pour shit, they pour blood on the building. Okay, they're gonna flood the places with. I don't know what they're gonna do, because I see, in Israel they poured milk. In France they dumped uh, the feces of the cows. Okay, and blood on the cow's blood. I don't know how is that, but um, Taurus is those food and stuff like that. Um, but in Gemini, it's technology. So I've no idea they're gonna, cell phones or whatever. I really don't know what are they going to use for rebellion. And labor unions sometimes are crime organizations. And if your coffee is already, if your business, whether it's a coffee, take it from the private case to other sectors, if your business is already providing the conditions that the worst and the most radical of the abolitionists would require, then Uranus and Gemini are good to go. And that's not just Uranus and Gemini, because you can open a brand, you can rebrand with Uranus and Gemini. It's going to be a timestamp that every social revolution, your business wins. My recommendation, do not rebrand before Uranus becomes very close to Aldebaran. Why am I saying that? The first term, and shout out to Threads of Fate. Okay? Threads of Fate astrology. I don't know if she's giving consultations. I know she began to do talismans. I don't know if she markets them. Everything I said about receiving consultations, all of that is true. But this first term, within the first decan of Gemini, the first term, okay, and we want to wait for Uranus to be closer, to be in the second, to be in the Jupiter term, because the Jupiter term is with Aldebaran, and then you can have a material win. Now, here's the caveat for this cycle. 2030, we have Ketu in Gemini. But Uranus is already forward. So if you rebrand now, your business is going to be becoming to be closer to Ketu. And that might mean you're going to have to look at Antares, and you're going to have to appease Jupiter. So with Jupiter in Virgo, this can definitely work out, because the ruler Frau is at the sign that's ruled by Ketu, and there is a reception, and that's going to be a little bit more something philosophical, or you could have meetings or philosophical teachers come into a cafe, and something works together. Okay, the pole of Jupiter, Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter and Mercury. But the Ketu is going to be, perhaps the rebranding would be more to the Jupiter, okay, or the thing about the library cafe or philosophical cafe. I know from Grace Brennan, they had a cafe for astrologers where they would come to meet in local meetings in Denver, I think it was. So I haven't been there, but those are all ideas and opportunities. Again, we have huge things to tackle, to adapt a business from the rare earth minerals that make the coffee machines to the workers, to Gen Z friendly. It's not just about, oh, people can sit. No, it's not about, people don't want to sit there. Okay, they need to be able to sit because of disabilities, but it's not that like they're going to sit there. People want to have a legacy. People want to have something as meaningful. People want to have their own, not sidekick, but something that will grow to be working in an interface. And one of the things I took from assassinated astrologer Nikola Stojanovic. Now, he did chart of Coca-Cola. Now, we can argue about Coca-Cola, but what he made sure is that the moons between the employees is compatible. And Lada Duncheva was a student has a teaching about moon nakshatra compatibility. It's a Vedic tradition. Now, of course, all of those could be revolutionized. Maybe, maybe you find a way to work with something else, or maybe you can make something. If you can make two, let's say, I'm Naval Moon Nakshatra. If you can make people with Naval Moon Nakshatra be able to work with one another smoothly, it solves a lot of problems for me in my business. Right now, everything is on hold because because it's setting the infrastructure. And there's a lot of work, but to know that in advance is something that can help both remediating and smoothing over. For example, think about if Nike knew in advance that people are going to care about slavery in the factories that are in Ekveld, okay, they probably would have adapted sooner. That's the power you have with Uranus Gemini, okay? So again, it's not, if you're thinking, oh, people don't want to work, no, it's not about that. It's about the balance between rest and work. And my best advice to you is to try to practice that in your own life. I know because I got tremendous amount of ailments when, and being Sun Middle Deacon Taurus, the balance of work and rest is something that I deal with in my personal life. So when I rest, I always hear people say, "Oh, why don't people want to work?" And then when I work, it's like, "Oh, people need to take some rest." And of course, people want people to have a subscription to all technologies. Now, on the one thing, definitely, if we can print, if we can print the coffee, we can print a tank that is both a submarine and a plane. So it's the same technology. Now, if we begin to play with blocking options and having everybody subscribed, then people are going to ask, just like they asked in communist times, who are the owners of the means of production? For example, China was the owner of the means of production for United States. And it made United States completely, entire capitalist endeavor, completely forget for a slight bit of a second, forget the corruption in capitalism. Let's say capitalism was zero corruption. When they are dependent on the means of production on a communist country, basically they cannot run an interface without China. Now, for the Rockefellers, it was great because you find the revolution there, you find the revolution there, you make this blacklist those and those blacklist this. When I studied the first year in university, I studied economy, first or second year. We had not too many courses on economy, and I struggled to understand the difference between capitalism and communism. I said, why am I struggling? Capitalism began with agrarian society that said, if I tend to this tree, which basically I don't need, okay, the most nourishing food is the food that just grows there. But let's say, if I tend to this tree, I make this tree grow fruits, I own the tree and I own the fruits. Communism says the same, but the tree is the machine that makes the coffee, or the coffee house that makes the coffee, but the machine and the people. That's what people didn't get about communism, that they were owned by the government. And everybody around me is like, Falcon, it's the same. Socialism, capitalism, it's the same. It's just the means of production. They're not trees anymore. What about agrarian communism? Ask Lenin. I don't know. Russians said that if you go to a library in Russia and you ask for a book about the great and benevolent leader Lenin, and the librarian says to you, science fiction is to the right. So And the thing with the situation, the geopolitical situation for Russia, is to the northeast of most countries. That's why people fight about the Arctic. Okay, Moon al-Qaid, remember my tiny war teaching from Jupiter Point of Thales on Beetroot. Now, you say, oh, we can address it from the other side. Yes, that's why Russia is worried about the United States. If we are not a high-flying disc, um, you say, what about Iran? Forget about it. I'm not going to talk about Iran. April's Fool Day, 1979. A new country is born. But again, that would not happen if the Shah was not already too Islamic before. People want to go back to the Iran where the ladies were wearing the short skirts and everybody were coming to visit. So do I. But we need to remember that we want to not just go back to that Iran because that Iran never really existed. Moshe Zayan. Okay, what is Moshe? Okay, it was the commander of Israel army. Serial rapist. They call it Zayan as though it's like a player. Secular country. I had friend in university came from parliament affiliated, even more than that. Somebody tried to rape her in the army. Entire family connected with everybody told her, don't talk about it because you won't have a job in the security. In the security. So, and then she was my friend before the Me Too. What can I say? But a good thing about her, she was old money when nobody was willing to sit with me or meet with me because I couldn't afford coffee or I couldn't afford to be at the restaurant. She would say, it's no problem. I can make salad. We can sit and talk. Because that's old money. It's not about how much you have or how much you have to spend. And she also knew that it's 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 good to have friends. It's good to have a conversation. Um, it's good to have important, connection with a human being. So now, opportunities. What is the Uranus Gemini going to be about with Saturn? Because we cannot talk about Uranus Gemini. I know that Saturn is about to ingress to Aries, but we cannot talk about Uranus Gemini without talking about the 2030 when Uranus is going to conjoin Saturn. The revolution now, and I'm going, one of the things, if I don't play chess, but if you play chess, you don't play it from the beginning, you play it from the end game, possible end games backwards. So Saturn Uranus conjoining in Gemini around 2030 with Ketu, with Lilith. If we take it back, then we understand what does Saturn want us? What depth is Saturn collecting on an accumulation of action level? What due diligence do we have to have? First of all, Saturn-Uranus conjunctions are new fields of science, and here it's going to be new fields of technologies. The people that had Saturn-Uranus conjunction in Mula Nakshatra, many of them developed completely new field, also to do with birthing. taking a field from here and a field from there. People, for example, used to make talismans only as a stone and very traditionally, and then turning that into completely. People can buy, I don't know, essential oil with that is talismanic. Completely new field of study. And this is, of course, in Mula Nakshatra, so these people have to transmute a lot. Okay, they have to transmute the way the entire system works. And this is why I did not say, oh, the credit to those of you who've been watching my know that, but because it goes back with, it goes together with, yeah, they'll have to get rid of being informative and MK often. So yes, when I speak names, it's two reasons I speak names. One, giving credit to something good that somebody did. Two, showing something where that person had an opportunity and that person really need to take advantage of the points of interferences to adapt their ways now because they've already had a myriad of opportunities to, okay, one or two ways. Either credit something good somebody did, and even if it's something bad somebody did, I usually say also the good things that they did. I'm not here to decapitate anyone, okay? But but the basis, so more things, more things we can think about. The Saturn Uranus is Saturn is the accumulation of actions that we did and didn't do. And with Saturn, many times it's not just what we did, it's also what we didn't do. Okay? If I think about when Saturn was in my 12th house, um, then I had to definitely rethink housing on an international level because the changes that happen are international. And here's just one of the things that I had to rethink. If I start a business and open a business, where do the taxes go? Now, for me, I didn't think about it from a bad point of view, but classified projects. Okay, so starting to apply the things I learned about for my entire life, and um, Uranus is revolution. So what Saturn is going to ask us, how did we rebel? It's going to correct the way that we rebel, because it's good to tend to something and to just do something. But Saturn says, okay, let's do something, but in a way it's actually effective. Okay? So the end game is the conjunction. And the conjunction can absolutely be digital, enclosed cities. But with Ketu, they are bombed. However, instead of being scared of that, Saturn is asking us what revolutions we didn't make. And if we know that now, we're in 2026, we got 4 years to rebel. Rebel violations and restrictions of our sovereignty, supposedly in the name of our security. Okay? But also, abolish the rapist. Abolish acts of rape. Saturn in Taurus. We need to rebel. Okay, Uranus is still in Taurus. We still got time. Rebel, whether it's currency-related stuff, the textile, the food industry, arts, Gemini's technology, rare earth minerals, rebellion of the miners. But if we are attuned, of course, we say, oh, we can't rebel everything at the same time. Of course, but also, if we are attuned, if I know that there probably are going to be miners' revolutions, and I say, wait a second, it's a blue ocean, ethically sourced rare earth minerals. Now, I already tended to that, but it's a blue ocean. Zero extortion calls rare earth minerals. Because a lot of people look at ecosystem. Ecosystem is fantastic. But we don't have bad decisions about ecosystem without extortion calls. Okay? So if I turn to a business building and there's mold in the building, and I say, can I talk with the people that do the infrastructure? They say, yeah, it's going to go up the ladder. Sooner or later, they're going to schedule or they're going to shut the business down to tend to that. They're not going to do that in one case and one case only. Either they can't afford because they paid money to extortion cults, or they are too detached from the effect that it has on people or even on them. Usually because of extortion cults. Somebody doesn't get raped or abused, they have the leverage, the energy, and the resources to take care, to tend to things. Now, Saturn Uranus is asking for us. Now, and here's the thing: if I know there's going to be a minus revolution, I say, okay, I'm on the look for new companies that are going to have rare earth minerals free of extortion codes. They're going to be. I'm not the only one thinking about it. They're going to be okay. What are deciding industries? What are they going to produce? And if they're going to have it in factories that are Gen Z friendly and disability friendly. Think about yes, Schindler was still an extortion cult. He managed to save people from Hitler. He sold defected bullets. Yes, weapon company. But it was still affiliated with extortion cult. Okay? Many things. I'm not here to criticize Schindler. But I'm saying, if he knew that there are going to be Nazis, and he knew that he can save some people from the death camps, then he did it. Opportunist, not opportunist. And if he manufactured effective and was hiring also disabled people, now, like I said, this war is going to be about the yes, no, and maybe. Okay, sexual sovereignty, not just in the face of people, but also in the face of technologies. Which is energy sovereignty. Okay, Neptune Aries is the holistic unit of the self, the holistic meaning of the I am. So we're definitely going to have new theories of what is the sense of self, what is the consciousness, and probably they're going to be centering around the head and the holistic connections of the head and the mind. Again, not because it's generally true, but it's going to be the head and the mind and the vagus nerve, the nervous system. So it's going to be more, you know, that there is the skeleton. There is an even creepier depiction, which is the nervous system. That's going to be the I am. Now that has other circles, and whether people call it aura or, and those are going to be observable. Okay, they can only keep the technology classified for a while. and once we are able to observe, then it's already science. Saturn Neptune might be the technology classification of the technologies that allow us to observe that very unit. Now, here's the thing: everybody that relied on believing that we won't be able to observe that did weird stuff in the astral. But here's another thing: the people. Big shout out to Annika Lucas and Douglas McIntyre. And he describes he grew up in extortion cult. The family was not rich family, but the father was murdering someone, and he was mind controlling the child. He was holding the hand of the child physically. Now you don't have to do that physically, because once there is attunement, just like people can have, energy sex, okay, with will and consent and everything, then they could also do crimes with those things. The difference being is embodiment and will and consent versus trauma based. Okay, versus trauma based and trauma bond. Um, it was some very interesting interaction in the astral. Um, and so when basically the father holds the hand of the child, and if the child was previously tortured, they can do that through mind control. And the child murders, and the father says, "You did that." Also, I had conversations with survivors of ritual abuse. When they were tortured, they began to say, "Me and the offender are one," and acknowledging the offender is not bad, but kind of like we are all one and we are all this, and they they basically is natural. The consciousness try to transcend torture and the division between people, and then he couldn't acknowledge rape anymore, even with the tenderest of interpretations. Okay, so and then they try to threaten me. Again, I'm saying that not to incriminate, but to expose the mechanism. And once those technologies leak, then we're gonna be able to see the differentiation, the blending. Is gonna be, if I make the analogy of colors, it's going to be like a blending of the colors, and we are actually going to be able to discern um, where something is coming from, and be able to have points of interferences. We're probably not going to be looking not at Jeffrey Epstein, not at Mark Detrow, not at Diddler, the same way we looked at up until now. And that's something I began to tend to when I was attacked, but particularly when Saturn ingressed to my 12th house. Even when I was psychically attacked, I said only names of the people that in person. But then, if they were tortured, and I said that probably they were tortured, and so on and so forth, because the point is not to decapitate. The point is to change, to grow from rape-based trauma bond to relaxed arousal and/or secure attachment. Okay, because of course, the children are not supposed to have sex. Okay, it's a developmental phase that they need to develop their own identity, and we're not supposed to interfere in that. Um, Now, it's also good to think, let's say I have a business, think about what in my business is reliant on some sort of addiction. Okay, because what happens? We have trauma and or rape or trauma bond, then people become addicted to things. It doesn't have to be drugs. It can even be sports where a person says, okay, they don't do the stretches before sport. What's happening there? Why the rush? When I began to align the toes in my feet, first of all, there were new muscles that I didn't know before. It released energy. So suddenly I would have energy. And I began to, and then my disability became visible because the muscles were aligning, and then I could barely walk on my feet. So basically that invisible disability became more visible just as I come to begin to work or to tend to correct it. And probably Saturn in Aries will be the muscle, a lot of the muscle work on literally my toes now. People that practice yoga, they have it naturally. I was born in the West. I learned yoga, but I never learned about those toes thingies. It was pretty recent. Yes. On the other hand, I didn't grow into a culture that believed that I have a debt because I was born, and that's okay. Or other type of significations. Um, so, is Saturn Uranus going to be digital debt camps? Can be, but it's going to already be the bombing of those, the bombing of the digitized, enclosed cities, or because Uranus is bombing. And it also asks us, what didn't we explode before? Okay, what what type of contracts did we not explode? Invalid NDAs, the oaths, Vulcan, oaths. The oaths were never valid. If you take a child and you torture them, and then at age 9 you do tests like this, tests like that, that is still a child. They can, a 9 years old child cannot, under any circumstances, give their consent. Okay? It is pedophilia to think otherwise. And it's consent to murder. It's consent to rape. It's consent to commit war crimes. Consent to continue on in the network. No, absolutely no one can give such a. Now, here's the thing. You have to have the exit, okay, the door to exit violence. How do we know that somebody is rehabilitated? Well, there's a lot of things to consider, but definitely the conditions for the nervous system to be regulated has to be there. If people work in slavery conditions, and slavery condition doesn't have to be forced labor, standing 10 hours on their feet, they're not thinking straight. Now, if they're your employees, somebody can snatch them. Somebody can hack their nervous system. If you say, oh, I hack the nervous system of everyone, I control everybody, mind control, those are the same techniques. Okay, this is why the extortion calls are global, because it's the same consciousness, there are the same techniques. There are various programmings, but those are the same techniques. And it's a treason code. So, now, no agreement is valid in such conditions. And anyway, people are going to need to reach the result where a person is not a threat to them. Challenging, I know, challenging. Um, Now, of course, there are people that tend to be more sustainable in that and more sustainable in that. But in any case, 9, 10, 11 years old child cannot give, and it's usually under torture that they do that. Cannot, they cannot say I consented. Now, That's the thing, that if they get people to believe that something is their nature, and and just think about it, those people, when they mature, they're going to be criminologists. They're going to be true crime journalists. So today I was offered a lot of advertisements now about the investments, a business that completely automates um, running uh, chicken food and eggs um, business. Now, already the cattle is not being treated well. Even the freedom eggs. Wanted to get my mother freedom eggs. I see by the color, okay, by the color of the egg. A freedom egg is something between orange. Some people say even red. I don't know if it's red or not. I've never seen a red one, but definitely towards orange. It's yellow. The freedom eggs are yellow. Okay, so I definitely tended to that. I definitely allocated resource to that. But now, okay, back in the beginning, and then people say, "Oh, should we eat chicken?" Well, we have been really so disconnected from. But the reason that we have been disconnected is because there were molestation, because there were rape, whatever the conditions are. People didn't know the effect, for example, of rape on the consciousness um, unless they were in secret societies in the Inuit time. Okay, with Sedna's father tried to sell Sedna to have power or demonic power. Eventually, Sedna had the power because people had to appease Sedna for food. So, um, but Saturn Uranus, first of all, it invokes the fact that we do not have technology without the occult affiliated with that. So whether it's getting occult literated, uh, um, astrology literated. I hear genocide. Other people want me to talk about it. Yeah, well, I said a case. I gave the case of Pearl Harbor. Okay? How do you get to do a Pearl Harbor? Same way 7th of October was done. People go to Thailand, they rape children because there it's legal. Go to Romania, they rape women. Usually they're like, yeah, I'm 16, I'm 17, and then everybody sees she 12. Okay? Or she gets hormones at 12, I don't know. But then it's extortion called, of course it's on tape. Then they're being extorted. They're being extorted, then you have people at the border. Israel legitimate, not legitimate today is Israel, tomorrow is Palestine. People sitting at the border watching. There are people crossing the border. The people crossing the border with weapons. The people crossing the border. Think Pearl Harbor. There's ships there. There are this. People say, okay, there's nothing. But you cannot talk. It's nothing from very high. You cannot talk. I say, but they're gonna invade. We cannot talk. They invade and they kidnap the watchers. How does one get one to do that? If they got a family, okay, sitting with a big family, that children goes to that university. That children goes to that university. Those children need money for the university. This is the spousey, and okay, they've been to Thailand. One videotape. Now let me break it down to you. Very likely the family knows, but this family is another family, and another family. Now, if the public knows, it's a big deal. So, and they have to pay money. Now, where do you get paid the money? Where do you get the classified projects? Classified projects pay the money. The same that paid them the money to go to Thailand. We had a person with us that his friend took him, paid for him to go to what he thought was sex worker. His experience was that the way he described it, he dissociated. He said he didn't see a woman. He saw body parts. It completely dissociated. And then, of course, you have an orgasm on that, which changes the ability to, okay, it affects the ability to orgasm. It loses malleability of the nervous system of the brain around pleasure centers. Now, that lady probably been trafficked. She wouldn't be there without being trafficked. Now, that thing probably on tape. Now, that's a small thing. That's something that can extort them, and that was right before the Me Too. And not only that, Israel had a law that discriminates consumers. Now, if they got this thing filmed, you don't have a date on that film. And that person that bought him that treat was a Mason. And that person was shit fuck scared of women. So what do you got to be afraid of women? Okay? We're not talking even Thailand. We're not talking even Peter Rings. We're not talking even... Now, of course, the person probably is going to want to be able to even self-pleasure. And the fantasies age lower, 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 lower. And then they get them prepared to go to Thailand. They get them prepared. And sometimes they do that in Israel. Now, once they get extorted, they can't talk. And some of them might have even took an oath of silence. Today is Israel, tomorrow is Palestine. If I see Mama Taliban back in Gaza after genocide, according to the UN, genocide. Okay, I can say the word genocide because according to the UN. Okay, I'm not jurisdiction. I'm not deciding if it's called this or it's called that. But if the UN said that, then I can say the word genocide. Then Mama Taliban. What's Mama Taliban? It's not her. It's not her issue. She's being trafficked. She's not being trafficked without being tortured since childhood. That means that, and then people at the border, Israel legitimate, not legitimate. Today is Israel, tomorrow is Palestine. Sitting, bombed, the same villages around, Otef Aza is called. It says settlements, today is Israel, tomorrow is Palestine. Same situation, different names, different countries. Still bombed, still in risk, still afraid of invasion. Why? Because Mama Taliban back in Gaza. Mama Taliban from there trafficked Israeli women from the Bnei Brak and zusammen noch ein genocide. Until enough people die so people can loot the minerals in the Middle East, but they don't loot just the minerals. They loot the traffickers, they loot the scientists, they loot the people that stayed when the other ones either had to... They looted Dr. Mengele's, okay? Now, if you know that Saturn Uranus can be bombed, it's not bombed death in concentration camps, it's bombed hospitals, it's bombed universities. What happened in Gaza? Entire universities, entire hospitals. Okay, when Iran sent missiles to Israel, that's how they portrayed it at the news. Okay, they gave name Iran, name Israel. Iran said Kiryat. What is Kiryat? Is basically kind of like the Pentagon. 2 meters from Israeli, which is the biggest mall in central Israel. Israeli group, Israeli building. There's a teeth insurance company that was just bought by them. Elron were bought by them. And Elron is also electronics and finances. So that's just why. And they bombed something in a university, Technion. What is Technion? Technion is the university where people go to for the research, all the technology of Israel, which is chemical infused stuff. So they bombed something like the Pentagon, something like a university with the chemistry department, a hospital, Soroka Hospital, So when something like that happens, entire place is looted. And the scientists, they know they have to go somewhere. That's what happened in Nazi Germany. Okay, that's paperclip. So, but you say, oh, okay, then I guess I should be that scientist then. Well, I want you to think Frank Olson. Say Frank Olson what? Well, I had an episode about his natal chart, but don't listen to me. Google Frank Olson. Frank Olson is the MK Often in the MK Ultra. I mean his death. These are not jobs a person can maintain and not be so infused with addictions. Um, and here's the thing, I see people around being a little bit informed and into it to say, oh, this person looks Mossad, this person looks Mossad. It's not a person looks Mossad. Person is kidnapped and tortured and mind controlled. Good morning, tomorrow they are, you name it. Best bet to join a global abolitionist that is abolitionist towards extortion calls as well. Now, you want to think both about the little things that associate with slavery. And each and every one of us, okay? I buy coffee, the barista is still standing. That's one thing to say, okay, I need to tend to that. I cook fish. I don't know if I should even, if I eat fish because I've been so disconnected from the minerals of the natural earth, or because I actually need to eat fish. Okay? Something, at least it's kind of like, well, I need to tend to that. Can I today have purely plant-based nutrition? I'd probably go crazy. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe I'm overwhelmed with rebelling many things. But here's the thing, to at least tend to that. Because the more we tend to, the easiest it becomes. First of all, to tend to things, to be in a certain flow. And if we can tend to the things that we thought, oh, it's unimaginary that you will abolish all slavery and so on and so forth. Well, if you can at least hold that that your business might have to be held accountable if that happens, and plan for it in the way that all things, how should I say that, if all things gone, that your business still sustains, your intergenerational wealth still sustains in a zero slavery, zero rape society, global, including extortion cult. Like I said, plan for sovereignty. Saturn Uranus conjoining is already going to be with Ketu. Whatever those digital prisons, digital cities, digital this, digital boom. Okay? It's leaving the agreement with Pluto. Uranus is bombs. And with Saturn, okay, they're going to be technological or trade. It can be trade centers, but it can be twin cities. It can be digital prisons. Um, Now, if your business is adapting to digital, but it's not standing for individual sovereignty, spirit and matter, and a lot of it is culture. If you're still, yeah, if you're still in a treason culture where people have to commit treason to belong, first of all, emotionally prepare yourself, like prepare yourself to even withstand secure attachment, to even experience relaxed arousal. Because otherwise, you're going to be just like, when they're going to be having digital coffee machines or printing food or whatnot, okay? A lot of the people that are not adept are going to feel like they're in the margins. And by the way, the more technological we are, the less we are adaptable to new technology. I'm not joking. In academia, we knew the people that it could be a computer science teacher that comes and doesn't know how to activate the screening. So where the component of tending to secure attachment, not trauma bonds, sense of belonging. One of the things when I worked on trauma recovery, okay, and I said people are used to relate on the basis of their miserable experiences. And I said it's a good thing that people can find people to relate to, but we also have to learn to relate to on a basis of safe and secure attachment. I didn't know to call it exactly in that name, but to be able to be happy for one another, or to be able to, okay, and the people that tend to that, there are shit tons of mindsets around that, because technology works on a certain interface, and the sense of self and psychology is that interface. And it's the closest to us, it's our families, it's our communities, it's and people say, well, I need to be able to sustain even if people commit treason, even if this, even if that. Well, this is true. But when it goes so much so that a child is raped and tortured and comes to dissociation and is mind controlled, then you don't get that resilience of the real world. Or you're constantly control obsessed and in an interface with technology, mind control, and so on and so forth. So, okay, the nervous system needs the conditions to be regulated. And there's always that tension between training or training for resilience and, you know, and understanding where are the limitations. For example, with the IDF, there was a time where people were trained to not drink water, and then they died because they couldn't. And then it was the opposite. And then also people died because they drank too much water. Okay? And people say, yeah, the IDF, fuck it. For me, as far as I'm concerned, you can say SS. The SS lost its people because they tried to police their drinking. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, you can learn it like that. So you say an IDF is, I'm not saying anything. I'm saying extortion cults are Nazis everywhere. So, so I hope this episode is allowing us to think, first of all, good things, good news. If we know that those digital prisons and 15-minute cities that we are afraid of are going to be bombed, and particularly the big ones, because Mercury is going to be with Jupiter. Okay? The big digital prisons of whatever they are. They can be corporations, they can be cities, they can be hospitals, many things. Religious.